Hey everybody, it's Monday night. That means it's time for Sports Night 101. Want to welcome y'all back. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you're looking forward to great things this week. We got a whole host of topics to talk about related to sports and sports news. So let's go ahead and get started. Man, I don't know what to say about the Dallas Cowboys. It hasn't already been said. I mean, people's had takes on the Dallas Cowboys. The storyline seems to stay the same year to year, doesn't it? I mean, here's a team that may or may not succeed through the season, but you can almost guarantee that something's going to happen at the end of the season that's going to have them derailed. This year, it really looked like they had a lot of momentum behind them. Looked like their offense was really clicking. Their defense had really come on, especially with the addition of Micah Parsons, who I'm telling you is the defensive project of the next decade. I think he has Ray Lewis potential. I don't think he's Ray Lewis. I'm not one of these people that throw those names out and go, oh my goodness, Ray Lewis is here. But I think I see the potential in him to become that. Now, whether he achieves that has a lot to do with how he prepares himself, how he continues to grow as a player, how he works within the system, all those things. But I'm telling you, the potential's there for him to dominate the next decade in a way we haven't seen in a while. So the pieces are there. The nuts and bolts, the skeleton of a team seems to be there. Well, reports are out now that, hey, we're thinking about getting rid of Lawrence, and we're thinking about getting rid of Amari Cooper. And I'm just thinking to myself, what are you doing, Dallas Cowboys? What are you doing? Is this retaliation for not getting a COVID vaccine? Is this some other anger management issue? I mean, what's the problem here? Amari Cooper, when I first heard his name, I thought it made a little bit of sense. And I know that I'm going to take some heat for that. But again, I'm not a professional, so I don't really have to worry about whether my takes are correct or not. I'm just out here spitting my opinion as a fan. Not that I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, mind you, but as an overall football fan. I heard Amari Cooper's name out there, and I thought, you know, that's not a bad idea to cut bait with Amari Cooper. I thought it was a bad idea to give him the contract in the first place. If you want to know what somebody's about, if you want to know who a person is, a good indicator, not always, but a good indicator is to look at their past. Past behavior oftentimes will predict future success. Now, of course, people change and people adapt, and that's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a pretty good principle. A person who has spent over a decade in the NFL and only shows up for 8 games a year, now that we're in a 17-game season, I don't know, maybe he'll show up for 9, I don't know. But you can guarantee that there's going to be a sizable amount of games every season where he's just not going to show up. And when he doesn't show up, this is the most aggravating player, I think, on the face of the planet as far as this play. Because here you have a player that for 8 games, maybe 9 now that we're in a 17-game season, is going to look like the best receiver in football. He's going to look like not only the best receiver in football, but he might look like one of the best all-time receivers in football. This guy is going to make spectacular catches. He's going to get a ton of yards. He's going to get a ton of touchdowns in those games. The flip side of that is when it's not one of those games, this guy's going to not show up at all. I mean, he's going to have like 20 yards catching, no touchdowns. I mean, you're really going to have to look on the stat sheet to hopefully find anything that says Amari Cooper in a good context. And it's just hard to value that in a league that's a cap-hit league. How do you put that many millions of dollars to a player who you know half your season isn't going to show up? And he doesn't have a great history of showing up in the playoffs when it matters most. So if I'm looking at it from the Dallas Cowboys perspective, why would I want to give this guy all this money so that he can show up a few games a year, about half the season? I'll give him credit, about half the season, and then take the rest off. This is exactly the reason the Raiders got rid of him in the first place. The Raiders wanted consistency at that position. They wanted to know when I go in to game plan for this next opponent, I can expect to get something similar to what you're going to provide every week. You're going to be very predictable in your play. He's very predictable. He's predictable in that you're not going to get anything from him for half a season. And a lot of times win those games count in the playoffs if you're lucky enough to get into the playoffs. And so I understood moving off of Amari Cooper because he's a big cap hit. I think he's a top 25 cap hit in the NFL right now. So I understand that. Move on. and go get some other receivers. It's not like you're leaving your receivers without anybody there for Dak to throw to. I mean, you have a pretty good receiving core beyond just Amari Cooper, even though he's the big name, the guy that sells the tickets, so to speak. Lawrence is another problem for me, though. Here's a guy you've put up with all kinds of stuff and extracurricular problems with Lawrence on your team. You've paid him a ton of money. He's the highest paid defensive player on the Dallas Cowboys. And this year, he really had a really good year. He had a strong year. But I'm not paying you just for this year. You are a veteran. You've been here a long time. And you really have not produced until this year. Or at least not in a long time. You had years ago. But in recent times, we have not seen a lot of production from Trevor Lawrence. To the point that last offseason, some of the people who were talking about these things were talking about maybe they need to get rid of Trevor Lawrence. Maybe he's not worth the money he's being paid anymore. It's a gamble with a player like that as to whether or not you give them the money, you allow them, you keep them on the team at that salary cap hit. Because if they don't produce next year, if they fall back into that slump that they've experienced a couple years before, then you're on the ticket for this huge cap hit. And so that's a lot of players you can't re-sign, a lot of players you can't bring through free agency onto your team. And so you're really limiting how many good to great players you can put on that defensive unit or maybe on that offensive unit. And so for me, if I'm Dallas, I'm thinking I'm going to give it one more year. He had a great year last year. Previously, he had a slump. I want to see if it changes this year, if he goes back to the slump, if he moves forward, because it's not like you're trading him. It's not like his value is going to go down, which is another red light that the Dallas Cowboys should see, that maybe they're paying these people too much because nobody wants to trade for them. If they're all that great, they're all that wonderful, they're the best whatever at their position, they are just amazing and they deserve every penny of the money they're getting, then why doesn't anybody want them at that pay rate? And so, if I'm Dallas, I'm saying, you know what, we're going to keep you one more year. And we're going to see if your trend from last year continues or if you fall back into that slump. And we'll make a decision next offseason. I don't know that I jar my defense that much by taking away one of its on-the-field leaders, the highest paid player on my defense, and immediately make a change. I know Micah Parsons is there, and I know he's got the potential to be a wonderful, great prospect. I just compared him to possibly having the ability to become a Ray Lewis. And I think Ray Lewis is an all-time great linebacker. But he's going to be a second-year player. I don't know that I put the entire weight of the Dallas Cowboys defense on Micah Parsons. Not in year 2. 3, 4, 5 maybe. Not in year 2. I think you still allow him to grow, you still allow him to develop, and you allow him to learn how to play these positions from other people who are really good at their positions. I don't see the value in making the Lawrence move at this particular point in your franchise. I think a fire sale is not the best way to be handling the Dallas Cowboys. I think they've overspent for a long time, though, and I think this is, to some extent, those chickens coming to roost. I think, to some extent, this is a product of, look, we paid Zeke Elliott a fortune. We've paid Dak Prescott a fortune. We've paid all these people, and there's only a certain amount of money that the league allows us to spend each year called a salary cap. And we just can't fit all these contracts anymore under the salary cap. This is one of the reasons why it's important to be careful and judicious with where you spend your money, where you put those pieces of your salary cap pie. Because while this player may be worth the money that they're being paid, they're bringing in tickets, they're winning games, are they worth the 3 or 4 players you're going to have to release or not go after in free agency in order to keep these players on your team? That's one of the decisions you have to make. And I think part of the Dallas Cowboys problems right now is they're having to deal with those cap issues related to some of the contracts that they've made, that some of them have not worked out well. I mean, look at Ezekiel Elliott. This guy looked like the next beast of the NFL. Now he looks like the next least of the NFL. He's not even the best running back on his team. Think about that. He's not even the best running back on the Dallas Cowboys football team. But you're paying him like he is the feature back, the greatest back, and one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the league. To me, that's insanity. But that's how we get to where we are now, where we have to make these tough decisions within the Dallas Cowboys organization. There's really no good answers. You just kind of have to go with it. All right, there's plenty of news articles out there and commentary about Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm sick of hearing about Aaron Rodgers. I'm as sick of hearing about Aaron Rodgers as I was about Brett Favre before him. He's a great quarterback. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, just like Brett Favre. He's a Super Bowl champion quarterback. Can't take any of that away from him. But my goodness, make a decision. You got a bunch of players on your roster who you say you care about and are really good friends with, who are waiting in the wings, possibly losing money because, believe it or not, even though free agency hasn't started, those deals have started to be made on other teams. They've talked to other free agents. They're making unofficial deals that'll be announced once the free agency period begins. You're causing them to not be able to do it. They're caught in limbo right now while those big contracts are being given up. And they can't negotiate. They can't figure out where their future is because everybody's waiting to see, with the Green Bay Packers, what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. Now, I don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. But now, he wants to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. This is a negotiating ploy for him to go out and to get more money. And more money than what he's making right now will basically mean that the Green Bay Packers are crippled. He don't want to compete for a championship. You can't compete for a championship when you're taking up 25 to 30% of the overall salary cap so that they can't go and sign other players. Look, you've proven you can't do it on your own. And this is what kills me with quarterbacks. I will pay Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. I will pay these quarterbacks a lot of money. Because at the end of the day, I know that I can surround these players with lesser talent and they're going to perform and achieve Super Bowl and great expectations. I know that. Look at Tom Brady when he was in New England. He didn't always have the best team on the football field when he was winning championships. Green Bay has a good football team. And one thing that aggravates me so much is the hypocrisy surrounding the Green Bay Packers. Mid-season, this is such a talented roster. There's no place else that Aaron Rodgers could go where he's going to find this kind of talent and this ability and have this kind of a chance to win a Super Bowl. Comparatively speaking, this team has it all. Immediately when he doesn't get it done in the playoffs, yet again, in the offseason, well, they don't have the talent to get it done. They don't have receivers beyond Devontae Adams that he can trust. They just don't have the talent to get it done, so forget about it. And as soon as the season starts and they start winning some games in that horrible division where they're going to win a lot of games, people are going to jump back on the bandwagon. Oh my goodness, this team is so talented. It's so wonderful. They're going to win, a championship this year. And then he's going to blow it in the playoffs like he always does. Excuse me, he won one Super Bowl. He did. He beat the Bears when Jay Cutler was riding an exercise bike on the sideline. He beat the backup. Yes, he did. So, to get to the Super Bowl. So props to Aaron Rodgers for that one. But for the most part, Aaron Rodgers has been awful in the playoffs. You can't get 3 points. So, he's going to ask for more money. And this is my personal opinion, and they're going to give it to him. Well, if you give him that much of the pie, if you give him that much of the salary cap, it doesn't leave any money left to sign players around him. If you're Tom Brady, I'm fine with that because you can win with a second, third-rate team in his prime. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you've proven you've got to have help. You've got to have players all around you. Why have to pay those players too? And if you can't compensate for those players not being on your team, then I can't pay you the salary I would have given to those players. If I can give you their salary and you still can compete for championships without great players around you, go for it. But I don't care how great a thrower of the football you are or how a once in a generational talent you are. If you can't overcome not having a bunch of superstars all around you, then I can't pay you like you can, because then I can't afford to put those superstars around you to make you successful. You put me in a position where I cannot succeed. And over, Aaron Rodgers has been consistent in two things: poor playoff play over the last decade, and constantly wanting to renegotiate to try to up his contract and make more money. And I'm all fine with making more money. I'm a capitalist. I don't know about doing hometown discounts and all that, but you have to be realistic. There is a trade-off in everything you do in life. Nothing you do in life, no matter what it is, taking a job, getting married, whatever it is, there's trade-offs. There's positives, there's negatives. The positive is, in this case, you're becoming even richer. You're making a lot more money. The trade-off is I can't give as much money to the rest of the players on the team, so I can't get the same quality of players that I could have gotten if I wasn't paying you $50 million a year. And therefore, because I can't pay that caliber player, you're going to be playing with players who wouldn't necessarily be starters on other teams, wouldn't necessarily be the guys that are sought after on other teams, because we just don't have the money to pay those guys. Those guys are going to go to places where they can make a decent amount of money and make what they're worth. It's not about what you're worth, not in a capped league. You don't just throw out a number out of your head and go, this is what I'm worth, because is he worth $50 million a year? Absolutely. He's a great quarterback. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He draws in money. He's one of the most entertaining quarterbacks to watch on the field. Absolutely, he's worth $50 million a year. I would argue he's worth $100 million a year. But I can't give you $50 million in an NFL where the cap is a little over $200 million. And then go, I got 52 other guys, let me spread out this other $150 million I got to spend. I can't do that. And put the players around you it's going to take for you to be successful, because you can't produce in a way that allows you to have substandard talent around you, which I could afford to put around you if I wasn't paying you, an astronomical sum of money. I could afford to put great receivers around you, great offensive line, really good defensive players out there, make a top 15 defense consistently. I can afford that. But I can't afford it if I'm giving you all the money or a quarter of our entire budget. I just can't. And it doesn't matter how rich the billionaire owner is, or in this case, how rich the stock is on this particular team. There's a cap, and it's a real cap, and you have to deal with that cap, and you have to deal with the reality of that cap. If I give you $50 million, which you are totally worth in an uncapped league, you're worth twice as much, maybe 3 times in an uncapped league. But we're in a capped league. And I know I can't put those other players around you that are going to allow you to be successful. And you're not a Tom Brady in his prime that can go out there with substandard players and win championships. So for me, I don't care as much about Aaron Rodgers. I think that he's using this as a ploy to get more money. I don't think there's any real chance he's going to wind up in San Francisco or somewhere else. I think he's going to be in Green Bay, or he's going to retire. And if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I'll be honest with you, you're going to have to rebuild in a year or two anyway. I'm just moving on. I'm getting past this headache. I'm rebuilding, and I'm trying to look to the future. I feel like such a negative person. Like Debbie Downer was at the Saturday Night Live character back in the 90s. I'm really feeling like I'm just in the dumps today. I just feel like every topic we're talking about is kind of in the dumps today. But we've got to talk about Laker Nation. I am a huge Laker fan. I want to start off prefacing that. I've loved the Lakers for 20 years. I mean, I love the 20 plus years. I love the Lakers. And it just saddens me to see where we're at in Laker Nation. And it saddens me even more to hear the excuse mongering surrounding where the Lakers are this season and moving forward. Now, we all know the story. We all know the scenario. In the offseason, a trade was made for Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook joined the Lakers. I didn't like the trade then. I don't like the trade now. I think it's horrible. I don't think you can win a championship with Russell Westbrook. I didn't think before he got here you could win a championship with Russell Westbrook. KD couldn't. James Harden couldn't. What makes you think you can win a championship with Russell Westbrook? He's a ball-dominant player, which is a kind way of saying he's an extremely selfish player. He's going to get his triple-doubles, and to be honest with you, that's all he cares about is his triple-doubles, I think. When you hear him in press conferences, you know, I didn't have any expectations when I came in, yada, yada, yada. To me, it sounds like a guy that, hey, I'm getting my numbers. What's the problem here? Well, the problem is that this game is not about you getting your numbers. It's about winning championships, especially when you're a Laker. Lakers is all about winning championships. And the Lakers just won a championship the year before last. It's not like the Lakers were in dire need of some tremendous change in organizational structure or in player personnel to compete for a championship. You had just won one. Like, you know, it just, I mean, they didn't win the year before, but just the year before that, you had just won a championship. There was no need for no astronomical change. And if there was, Russell Westbrook was not the answer, was never going to be the answer, and could never be the answer. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a LeBron James fan. I will say I think he's one of the greatest players to ever play the game of basketball. In my personal opinion, the second greatest player to ever play the game of basketball, only behind the great Michael Jordan. And he's the best overall player to ever play the game of basketball. I mean, he can do about anything he wants to on the court. He can take a season and just decide this is what I'm going to be great at, and he'll be great at it. I mean, other than free throws. He is just such a dominant player. A generational talent. And we have been lucky to have the opportunity to watch and experience and be a part of his journey as fans. And I feel sorry for him at this point. I really do, because here you look at him. He's got Russell Westbrook, who just seems to have no clue and no desire to get a clue, is just wrecking up the entire Laker team, and is just fine because he's getting his triple-double, so what does he got to worry about? You got Anthony Davis, who was billed as being a top 5 big man in the NBA. Oh, he's going to be dominant, and he would be if he was available. But he's always hurt. And I don't care how good you are. I don't care if you are Michael Jordan. I don't care if you're a mix of Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kobe Bryant. If you can't be on the floor, if you can't be healthy, if you can't be active in the game, what good are you? And I understand that sounds harsh, but it's a reality. And it just seems like he's always injured. And so you got LeBron sitting there watching him fall yet again to some ankle injury or something. And you got Westbrook over here doing whatever it is Westbrook's doing. If I'm LeBron, I'm doing the exact same thing LeBron's doing. I'm just going for a scoring title, man. Forget this. Actually, I'm doing something different. And this is the difference between me, a guy who just talks on YouTube, who knows nothing really about sports, except to be a fan for decades, and an actual athlete competitor. I'd be injured. I would shut it down for this year. Ain't nothing happening. But the sad part is, ain't nothing happening next year. Look, the $47 million you owe next year to Russell Westbrook, you're still going to owe to Russell Westbrook next year. You are not getting out from under that contract. Are you going to trade him and get somebody else to take on them? There's nobody taking on that money, especially when you're not willing to put a pick with the trade. And I understand why they don't. Anthony Davis is hurt all the time. LeBron's probably going to retire in a couple years or whatever. You're going to be left with nothing and no draft picks to build anything in the future. I get it. But without that, nobody's taking that contract off of you. He is going to be the albatross around you that's going to anchor down and weigh down and destroy your season next year as well. We as Laker fans are in a state of no hope. of pure despair. And I'll tell you someone else I feel sorry for in this whole Laker debacle. And this is going to surprise a lot of you. I feel bad for Rob Pelinka. Now hear me out before you get those angry messages going and I get all the hate mail. Hear me out. Rob Pelinka is a guy a lot of people around the league considered not worthy, not experienced enough, not had the professional experience, not prepared to take on the position he has with the Lakers when he got it. He had an opportunity to make a couple trades that would have really made the Lakers a better team and would have really been interesting to watch this year. One of which was he had an opportunity to get DeMar DeRozan. Could you imagine what DeMar DeRozan would look like next to LeBron James? Oh my goodness, that'd be an awesome building blocks to a team. And for the 20 games a year you have Anthony Davis in there, it could be something special. And if you luck up and Anthony Davis can actually play some of the playoff games, oh my goodness, where you could be. But he didn't pull the trigger on those trades. And he didn't because LeBron James and Anthony Davis said, we want Russell Westbrook. We don't want these other trades. We don't want these other guys with potential. We want Russell Westbrook. He is a former MVP. He is a triple-double machine. He is a future Hall of Famer. That's who we want. We want to win now. We want somebody with experience that's that good. We want him. We'll make it work. And I remember LeBron James early in the process telling reporters, I want to see the same fury, in the second half of the season when we're winning these games and stuff as we're seeing now when things aren't bad. Well, we didn't get a chance to see things work out. All we seen was the bad. But anyway, getting back to why I feel sorry for Rob Pelinka. People are killing him in the press. They're saying, he should have overruled LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Now wait just a minute. Hold up. Listen to what you're saying. Could you have imagined the blowback, the pure venom that would have been spewed to the Lakers and Rob Pelinka if news got out that he overruled Anthony Davis, fine, overruled LeBron James to bring in DeMar DeRozan instead of Russell Westbrook? Oh my goodness, he'd get killed. I could hear people on these TV shows right now. Who are you to think you know better than LeBron James on how to build a basketball team? I can hear him now. LeBron James has forgotten more in his little pinky than you'll ever know about the game of basketball. He would have gotten destroyed. He might have gotten fired. He got destroyed so bad. And so Rob Pelinka gave in and gave LeBron James mostly, and Anthony Davis as well, their way, and brought in Russell Westbrook. But did he really have a choice? I mean, he would have gotten smashed by the media. I could hear Stephen A. and Skip Bayless right now just destroying him for daring to make such a call. Could you imagine, the talking heads in the media, how they would have attacked this guy? They would have made him look like he was just some bum they would have made him look like he was just some idiot off the street that knew nothing about football, basketball, knew nothing about how to build a team, and he was going to question the great LeBron James about building an NFL or an NBA franchise? How dare he? Let me explain something to you. Just because you're amazingly great at one thing, and I just said LeBron James is the second greatest player in the history of NBA. Now, some people will take that as a slight. I don't understand that. If you tell me he's the best, I'm not going to take it as a slight toward Jordan. You're saying he's one of the two best people to ever do this ever. To me, that's saying he's pretty great. But anyway, but just because you're really great and amazingly good at one thing doesn't mean you're amazingly good at other things, even related things. Remember, I said Michael Jordan to me is the best player to ever play basketball. To me, it's hands down. I mean, his killer instinct, his ability to just dominate and destroy his opponents, I've never seen anything like it. How good of a general manager has Michael Jordan been? I mean, how about them Charlotte Hornets? I mean, yeah, okay. Michael Jordan has been a horrendous general manager in the NBA. Has not been able to put together a great, even a really good squad in all the years he's been there, over a decade of experience. And it's shown an ability to do almost nothing as a general manager. LeBron James is a great player, one of the top 2 players, just like Michael Jordan of all time. That doesn't mean he knows what it takes to build a great team, how to get that chemistry, how to get the players that are kind of complement each other, and how to build that working relationship. And it doesn't take away anything from the player. It doesn't take anything away from the player of Michael Jordan. He's still the greatest player, in my opinion, to ever play the game. But he's a horrible general manager. I think all this shows is the same thing is pretty much true with LeBron James. A great, all-time great player on the Mount Rushmore of NBA players. All the rest is the most knowledgeable basketball player probably I've ever seen. As far as just basketball IQ, it's off the charts. But you couldn't figure out that Russell Westbrook really wasn't going to fit in with what you were doing there with the Lakers. So you sent all those guys out the door. You don't go through with trades like DeMar DeRozan, and here we are. And it's just a great big mess because I, as a Lakers fan, I don't see any hope for next year. You're still not going to get out from under that contract. You're still going to have a huge contract for Anthony Davis, and he'd be worth it if he could play, but he can't get on the field. And availability is an ability. It's a lot of times the most important ability. Give me a guy that can be there and be there consistently over a great player, all-star player, who might show up but probably won't. So you're going to have those 2 contracts, and you've got LeBron James's contract, which LeBron James is playing out of his mind and deserves his money. But how many more years can he do that at his age? I mean, he's been in the league for 20 years. And it's going to be another year next year because you can forget about building anything. You're not fixing this in the off season. There's no fixing this. There's nobody out there going, yeah, we want that. We want Russell Westbrook at $47 million. That's not out there. That's not a realistic picture for this offseason. So what's going to happen? Well, the Lakers are going to wind up rolling it back, putting in a few pieces here and there, trying to come up with something, and be largely back in the same situation, maybe a little bit better next year. Maybe they'll actually make into the playoffs because I don't think they can win in the tournament this year. They barely win a game right now. But maybe make the playoffs? Is that really what Laker Nation is about? Maybe make the playoffs? And I've got news for LeBron James. You're an all-time great, second best player in the NBA. As far as Laker Nation is concerned, we could care less. You got 1 championship with the Lakers. Kobe got 5. You know, we have a long history of multiple championships by great players. 1 championship does not get you on the Mount Rushmore of Laker Nation. It gets you on the overall body of your work throughout your entire career, gets you on the Mount Rushmore of all NBA. But as far as Laker Nation, what have you done for us? And so far, you've got 1 championship. And believe it or not, whether you want to put all this on Rob Pelinka or not, you okayed it, you greenlit it, and it's on you that Russell Westbrook is a Los Angeles Laker, and we're in this mess. Maybe the year after this we can do something different, but you got a year more of injuries on Anthony Davis. You got a year more of wear and tear on LeBron James before you can get out from under this contract. And I just don't see a whole lot of hopefulness as a Laker fan. And that saddens me and that pains me to say, because he is absolutely my favorite. This is absolutely my favorite team. And it just pains me to say that the future is so bleak. I thought it would be fun to start out doing some top 10 lists of all time. You know, the NFL is rich with a history of great football players and great people that have built the game that we all love and we watch and we buy the merchandise and all the rest. It's just an exciting game. And I thought it'd be interesting to build a list of the top 10 players at different positions of all time, and each week, each Monday, go through a different position. Now, this is probably the easiest position to do because great quarterbacks, I mean, the hardest part is narrowing it down, really. You know, who doesn't get on the top 10 list? When you think about great players in the NFL, quarterbacks are sometimes the first ones to come to your mind. And it's just the nature of their position. They touch the ball every play. They're always a part of the play. It's almost impossible to win if you don't have at least a decent one, especially in today's NFL. And so this is my list. It's my personal list, of my personal favorite quarterbacks of all time. It's probably not your list. It's probably not anybody else's list. But that's okay. It's my list as a fan. And these are who I think are the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Number one, I think, is Tom Brady. And if you'd asked me this 4 years ago, I'd have probably said, Joe Montana or Elway or Marino or someone. But Tom Brady, just his ability to do so much with less, as we talked about earlier, he doesn't have to have a great team around him. As his age is kind of crept up on him, he does need more help, and so you've seen him last year or the year before last do some really good things with Tampa Bay, and had a pretty good season this last year with Tampa Bay, even though they didn't win the Super Bowl. But over the years, just watching him win with lesser talent, beating teams that are far more talented, should have won these games. It's just amazing. But of course, he was paired with, in my opinion, too, the greatest coach of all time. So that helps. But Tom Brady he can rise above any situation. He can lead any group of guys. Almost it. I mean, he is what you want in a quarterback. You talk about intangibles. This guy is the definition. You look up intangibles in the dictionary, there should be a picture of Tom Brady. I mean, he's that good. Joe Montana, I think Joe Montana was the Tom Brady before Tom Brady. And I think the sad part is if Joe Montana hadn't been replaced by Steve Young and wound up going to the Chiefs, I think he had another couple Super Bowls in him. I really do. I think he wins the one that Steve Young won, and I think he might win one or two more. I mean, he was just amazing. Nothing rattled him. Nothing made him crazy. He was calm. He was cool. He was collected. Just like Tom Brady, he could lead people, but you never really knew if he could lead substandard talent because he always had great talent around him in the San Francisco years of the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, they always had great teams. And people want to always push the Jerry Rice, that he was great, but he had Jerry Rice though too. He didn't start out with Jerry Rice. He won at least one Super Bowl without Jerry Rice. So the guy can play. He's an all-time great. I think he gets forgotten because it's been so long since he retired in the early 90s, but I mean, just a tremendous player. John Elway, I would put number 3. I think John Elway had all the tools you need to be a great quarterback. The only reason I put him in front of Dan Marino is that he won 2 championships. But I don't think championships are necessarily what defines great quarterback play. And John Elway is really the reason that I believe that, or at least one of the illustrations to why I believe that. John Elway won 2 championships after he was already advanced in age and his body kind of taking a beating. He wasn't the quarterback he was 6 or 7 years ago, and I think he would have admitted that as well. But he was on a greater team. And the team, along with him, because he was still a great elite quarterback, he just wasn't what he had been, was able to win 2 championships. I think without Terrell Davis, some of the other weapons that he had, I don't think that happens late in his career. But, if winning championships is what it takes to be considered one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL, then I wonder, was John Elway, after he lost a step or two, a better quarterback than he was in his prime when he was great and he had all of his abilities, was really just wrecking the league? Was he not as good as he was in his last couple of years? No, we know that he wasn't as good when he won those 2 championships. He was on a better team. And so for me, that right there is proof that winning championships isn't everything when we talk about who's the greatest quarterback. Because John Elway won the championships and became ahead of Dan Marino, in my opinion, based on those 2 championships after he's already lost a step or two. To me, his greatest years was before that. Dan Marino, I know he never won a Super Bowl. Miami never really put a team around him capable of winning a Super Bowl. But he was an amazing, I think in this league, the rules the way they are now, I'm not sure this guy don't put up 10,000 yards this season, maybe 100 touchdowns. I mean, this guy was throwing up astronomical numbers in years where running was the way of the league. There wasn't a lot of passes, and it wasn't the league we see today. And he was able to put up those numbers and do those things and really dominate in a way that we hadn't seen before, or I hadn't. Peyton Manning, great quarterback with the Indianapolis Colts, went to Denver, won a championship there. I think that he early on in his career, I think he kind of choked up a little bit in the playoffs, which hurt him. But as he became a seasoned veteran, he was really able to overcome those mishaps and really dominate in the playoffs as well. His last championship, he won with the Denver Broncos. He was throwing some ducks, but I think he had one of the greatest lines in NFL history when he just basically replied, "These ducks, they go for touchdowns," and I'm just like, that's amazing. So he was tremendous. This is one of my favorite quarterbacks growing up. The next one, Troy Aikman. I have never seen, and people forget Troy Aikman too, because he didn't have the awfully great numbers and all these things, but he had Emmitt Smith, and Emmitt Smith ran the ball a lot. And so he didn't have an opportunity to throw up astronomical numbers. But I will tell you, Troy Aikman is the most accurate quarterback I personally have ever seen in the NFL. This guy could put it on a dime. And to me, if I'm building a team, I don't care if you have a gun for an arm. I don't care if you can, be on your knees at the 50-yard line and heave it and get it in the end zone. I could care less. If you're on your knees, you're down anyway, most of the time. That doesn't matter to me. Give me a smart quarterback and give me an accurate quarterback. Give me a quarterback that can read defenses, nickel and dime it, Tom Brady your way to a championship, and I will take that any day over somebody that's just a gunner. Because they tend to be able to manage the game, control the clock, and win championships. Johnny Unitas is another quarterback I think that, he was before a lot of our time, but oh my goodness, he was a quarterback that was beyond his time. Just a tremendous, tremendous quarterback that we forget all too often. Warren Moon, oh my goodness, Warren Moon. Warren Moon had to deal with so much because of his race and being able to get a job as an NFL quarterback. But I'm telling you, you want to talk about a quarterback that could run the football, could throw the football. Oh my goodness, this guy was he was like Dan Marino. He was putting up astronomical numbers during a time period when that really shouldn't have been the norm. Just an amazing quarterback. If you haven't heard or seen much about Warren Moon, do yourself a favor. Go look up some YouTube videos of some old games with Warren Moon. You're really in for a treat. Otto Graham back in the 40s. Great quarterback. Really the basis of the quarterbacks we see in the NFL today. Kind of the foundation of that. He was kind of the beginning of the throwing quarterback. And then Brett Favre. Oh my goodness, what can be said about Brett Favre? Brett Favre was, he made a lot of mistakes. He threw some interceptions and things. But I'll tell you, out of everybody on this list, when Brett Favre was on the field, you wanted to watch Brett Favre play. You wanted to see Brett Favre play because he just enjoyed the game. He played it at such a high level. He was able to do things with a football nobody else could do and some people had never seen before. I mean, he was just an amazing gift to football and really deserves to be on this list. Now, some of you will notice some names not on this list. This is my list and your list may be different, but these are my top 10. I think there's some players that could work their way into this list. I can only think of one right now that I'd really hang my hat on, and that's Patrick Mahomes. But to me, you have to do the work first before I give you credit for it. Go out there, build your resume, win some more championships, do what you got to do, put some more numbers up. And when your career's over or close to over, we'll reevaluate. But this is the 10 as I see it right now. Getting back to the problem with NFL salary cap, and we talked about this earlier. Sometimes look at Aaron Rodgers or some of these other players and you go, how can they ask for so much money? Or, gee, this is a capitalist society. Ask for all you can get and still build a team around them to be able to succeed. Well, no matter how much money you have, no matter how many billions you got in the bank, how many zeros you see on a spreadsheet, next year, 2022, each team is going to have $208.2 million to spend. That's their total salary cap. Everybody's contract of a 52-man roster has to fit within that $208 million cap range. That's the facts. I can have billions upon billions. I can have $80 billion in the bank. I can only spend $208.2 million for 2022. That's the cap. And sometimes I think we're too quick to forget that. We're too quick to go, man, this guy's worth billions. He can afford to pay $50 million for this quarterback or whatnot. But let's think about what happens when I give you that money. That's money I can't give to other people on the team. So, yeah, you got your huge piece of the pie, but what's left to pay the other people to be on the team so that we can have a full team that's able to compete for a championship? Unless you're one of those players like Patrick Mahomes, have no problem. He's number 7 on the list. Got no problem paying him $35 million because I believe he can make up for a lot of poor play by other players on his team. He can overcome having a less than perfect defense. He can overcome problems sometimes in other areas because he's just that good. But let's go through and look at some of these numbers and look at the successes of the teams that are paying these players this kind of money. Matt Ryan is the highest salary cap hit for 2022. Matt Ryan has never won a Super Bowl. Matt Ryan's team is just awful, I guess is the best word to say. Not a lot of talent on this team, but they got Matt Ryan, and Matt Ryan's making almost $50 million next year. Doesn't leave a lot of money to go out and sign defensive players and receivers and offensive line and build a team that can compete for a championship. Because if my whole cap is $208 million and I'm paying you close to $50 million, that'll leave me about $160 million to pay the other 52 guys. I'm not going to get a lot of superstars for that. I'm going to get a lot of B guys, C guys, and whatever. And I don't know about how you feel, but I just don't think Matt Ryan can overcome a bad team. I don't think he's that quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, number 2, he wants to be number 1 at $46,664,157 cap hit. How many championships Aaron Rodgers won in the last decade? And I know they're complaining, and I hear the talking heads. Oh, the Green Bay Packers don't have enough depth. They're not a good enough team, even though when the season's going on, all I hear is, oh, they're the greatest team ever, or the best team in the NFL for him to be at. They got talent everywhere. But when he fails to win, the excuse is the team isn't good enough. Well, how can the team be good enough when all our money's going to you and I have no more money to give to anybody else? Kirk Cousins at $45 million, 0 championships. I would argue not a whole lot of success with Kirk Cousins. And that's with Washington when he was there and with the Minnesota Vikings. Great, pretty good numbers. to great numbers, but not a lot of success. Not showing the ability to compensate for players not being that good around him, but we're still having to release the great players because we can't afford to keep his contract too. So we wind up in a situation where you can't succeed. You're not good enough to succeed like Tom Brady with lesser talent, but I can't afford to put the great talent around you because you've taken up all the salary cap or a big percentage of it. And so you're going to be playing with B and C players, and you're not good enough to get it done with those players. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to be a really good quarterback and go, I need receivers, I need an offensive line, I need a defense, I need these things to succeed. Most do. But then you can't take away my ability to sign those pieces by asking for such an astronomical sum and go, why aren't I winning? Why aren't there great players around me? Because those great players want to be paid too. And you've taken all the money. Deshaun Watson, $40 million. I don't know whether it's worth it. It's not worth it, anywhere in between. I know he's never won a championship. I know that he played with some really good players with the Texans and never won a championship. But we haven't seen him play in a year. I don't know if he's worth the money or not, but that's his cap hit right now. Ryan Tannehill, $38 million, fifth highest cap hit in the league. Gee, Ryan Tannehill looked really good in the playoffs last year, didn't he? Didn't he look like a $38 million quarterback? I mean, seriously, man, he was... Oh, yeah, right. He was kind of the reason his team didn't progress. Okay. But, hey, I mean, you're the highest paid player on the team and one of the top paid players in the NFL. What does it matter? Because we can't afford to bring anybody in to help you because you got all the money. Russell Wilson, $37 million. You know, Russell Wilson did win a championship. But Russell Wilson was not the sixth highest paid player in the NFL when he won the championship. They had a great team around him because they could have paid that team around him. He was early in his career. Now they can't afford to bring anybody in or hire anybody because all their money's going to Russell Wilson. Does Russell Wilson deserve $37 million? Yes, he does. If this was a non-cap league and you could pay people completely what they're worth, he is worth $37 million. He's box office. He's a great player. You know, he seems to be no trouble. He's definitely worth the money, except in a cap league where I have to let other players go to give you that money. And then you come back and say, well, we're not that good. We don't have this and we don't have that. Well, those players want to be paid too. And even though I may have $30 billion in the bank, I can only spend $208.2 million this year. That's league rules. Patrick Mahomes, got no problem paying Patrick Mahomes $35 million a year. MVP, Super Bowl MVP, already in his young career. Proven he can do it without a great defense. Doesn't need a great running game. Just give him a couple receivers. We can still afford that with this and a decent offensive line. This guy can get it done. So I got no problem giving Patrick Mahomes this kind of money. Dak Prescott. We already talked about this at length with the Dallas problem, but $34,450,000 worth of cap hit next year. Really? Really? In a $208.2 million cap hit league, I'm going to give you that kind of money. Dak Prescott has proven one thing. He can win and he can ball. But boys, he better have things around him to be able to do it. He better have a top 10 defense. He better have receivers just coming out of the woodwork. He better have a running game. He better have everything going his way. And how do I create a team where everything is going his way when I'm paying Ezekiel Elliott all kinds of money? I've got you as the 8th highest paid player in the NFL. You know, if you all are taking up a quarter, half of my salary cap, how in the world am I going to be able to put a great team on the field? Especially as some of these great players progress in their careers. Do you think if Micah Parsons continues on this progression to be the next Ray Lewis or something similar, he's not going to demand a high salary? Where does the money come from? And so we're seeing this kind of with the fire sale, the yard sale idea of Dallas Cowboys, and we're also seeing it in an inability to put together a team that can win a championship with Dak Prescott. Jared Goff, $31,150,000. I would absolutely cry if I was a general manager or owner of a team and I was paying Jared Goff $31 million a year out of my salary cap. If that was a $31 million hit to my salary cap next year, which I guess, hey, if you're the Lions, what does it matter? You're not going to win. Are you ever going to win? I can't in my lifetime remember a time when they were really great. I remember times when they thought they were going to be great, and people were like, oh, this is the beginning of something, but it never seems to pan out. And then TJ Watt with $31,118,694 cap hit next year, which is a huge cap hit for a defensive player. In a league like we've got now, I don't know how you can justify paying any defensive player that much money, that big a piece of the salary cap. He's worth the money. He's not worth that big a percentage of the salary cap because, let's face it, offenses is what wins in the NFL right now. And that kind of hurts my heart a little bit to say because I grew up when defenses ruled the world. But in this league, the way it's set up now, offenses is where it's at. And I don't know how you can give that big a percentage of cap to a defensive player and build something close to a championship team. That would be very difficult to do. But these are the top 10 cap hits in the NFL. Look at the teams they're on. How many of them do you think, and this I'm asking for your opinion, comment down below, whatever, but I'm asking for your opinion on this one. How many of these players are on teams that are probably going to have a chance to compete for a championship next year? Or are even going to be very good next year? Does anybody believe Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons are going to be a Super Bowl contender next year? Now, they may compete for the playoffs because they're in that garbage division with Carolina and the Buccaneers and all that, without Tom Brady. So they may compete, but really, they're not in any danger of doing anything special. I'm guessing they'll be at the bottom of the league next year. I'm guessing even in that division, they'll be third, maybe even fourth in the division. Aaron Rodgers, I'm guessing, will probably do the same thing Aaron Rodgers has done over the last decade. He'll dominate a weak and pitiful division, get a bye in the playoffs, and find a way to lose it in the playoffs, probably in the championship game. Kirk Cousins, Minnesota Vikings. Anybody think that they're going to be the dangerous team competing for a Super Bowl run? Probably not. Deshaun Watson and the Texans. I don't think anybody's got the Texans as a top 10 team. Ryan Tannehill and Tennessee Titans, possibly. But Derrick Henry is another year older on those knees. Running backs typically have a short lifespan in the NFL, especially the running style that he has, that power running style. And he got hurt this year. I don't know how many more years he's going to be able to be that factor back, be that guy, game in and game out. And I know people are like, well, yeah, but you got injury. Injury's part of it. That wear and tear on your body as you get older causes injuries, which causes you to be out and causes you not to be as valuable as you were because you're not able to get into the game and play. And even when you do play, sometimes you're not as effective because those injuries start to add up and start to affect your body's ability to continue to carry the ball 30 times a game or whatever. So I don't think anybody's looking at Ryan Tannehill and going, oh my goodness, what a dominating quarterback and how he can lift his team up to, the next height. Russell Wilson is a great quarterback, awesome quarterback on a pretty less than average team that really couldn't even get it done last year. I mean, they weren't even in the playoffs. So, yeah, you got this great quarterback, but what can he do without those players around him? And you can't afford to put those players around him. Patrick Mahomes, I think he's got and the Kansas City Chiefs has a real shot at winning a Super Bowl again next year. Got some great players on the outside, great receivers. And really, I think that's all Patrick Mahomes really needs is really good receivers or great receivers and a pretty good offensive line. And he's proven defense. He can go with a top 15, top 20 defense. He can do something special. Dak Prescott, I don't think Dallas is going to get anything done. And I think Dallas is going to wind up with more salary cap troubles as they move forward unless the contracts actually leave, like the Zeke contract and things. I think they're going to go out and they're going to play well in that division, that awful NFC East division. And have a good shot at winning that division, but basically being one and done in the playoffs again. Jared Goff, I'm not even going to dignify that with an answer. And TJ Watt. Again, I don't know how you justify that kind of money to a defensive player in a offensive league like we find ourselves in. But if you're going to give it to one, him or Aaron Donald are really the way to go. But really not the players on that team to get it done and compete for a championship. So if you look at it, when you spend that kind of money at the quarterback position, you better make sure you're getting a quarterback who is good enough to uplift and make good players look great. He better be a Tom Brady type quarterback that can go out there with lesser talent and win championships, because that's what you're going to be able to put around him is lesser talent, because we're in a capped league. And if he can't, then you can't afford to pay him that kind of money, because then you can't afford to put those players around him. If he can be that guy, then go ahead and pay him the money, because it doesn't matter if you have B or C guys, you're still going to compete for championships because he's just that good. And so I think that's really the point with quarterbacks. All right, well, that'll do it for this edition of Sports Night 101. Hope you've had a great time. Really enjoyed this talk with you. Hope to see you all again next Monday at 8 o'clock. Have a great one.